Hello friends and welcome to another monthly wrap up. July has been an okay month. I have been really busy at work again and I've still been reading, but nothing's really been hitting like a favorite, and my movie and TV show watching really took a nosedive in July. So, I'm hanging in there. But on the bright side, the weather has been really lovely. I'm still sitting out on my balcony and reading a lot, except when it's been thunderstorming, but I love a good thunderstorm as long as I'm safely inside, so the thunderstorms have been nice as well. I live in Madison, Wisconsin, and our big downtown art festival was this month. And at that art festival, I bought this art print of a bookworm. And my plan was to transform a little piece of my bedroom into a reading and filming nook, but I have not had the time or energy to do any projects at home. And so that's where I would want this print to live eventually, but fingers crossed that the nook happens later this year. Like I was saying, I'm feeling a little bit down about this month's reading, but when I look back, I really think my long hours at work just negatively impacted the immediate enjoyment I was getting out of my reading. I do think I read some good books this past month, but I do think it's true that like nothing was really a favorite. But first up, going in order from least liked to most liked, I finished ASL by Jean Thornton really early in the month. This was on my seasonal summer TBR, and I'm glad I took a chance on this book as a new release by a new to me author, but I did end up really bouncing off of this one. It is about three trans women who met each other online in the 90s in a gaming community, and they were in the middle of building their own game as well. And then later, many years later in 2016, they are all living vastly different lives, but their paths converge again serendipitously. I think the premise of this book was really fascinating, but I really struggled with the pacing. I almost DNF'd it in the middle of the second chapter because it presented, in a mixed media sort of way, a very lengthy IRC chat log where these three characters and the other folks in their gaming community were chatting, and it did feel very authentic to the internet chat room of the 90s, which made it nearly unreadable. For some reason, I was just really struggling with reading this chat room dialogue. Once I got past that chapter, it doesn't really happen like to that length again in the book. So it was much better. It was a much better reading experience after that chapter, but it was still really slow going, and it took a really long time for the characters' paths to actually cross, and that's what I was really looking forward to for the whole book. So I don't know, I had really high hopes for this one, but it didn't really match what I wanted from it. I don't read IP books very often, but this month I ended up reading a collection of short stories set in the Dragon Age universe, and it's written by the writers of the Dragon Age video game series. This collection bridges the gap between Dragon Age Inquisition, which came out in 2014, and Dragon Age Veilguard, which came out last year, so a decade after Inquisition. And I enjoyed reading the collection overall. I would recommend it to other fans of the franchise who want to revisit the lore and revisit the characters, but it didn't blow me away or anything, and I wouldn't recommend it to people who aren't fans of the games. That said, I have a review on Goodreads, link in the description, if you want more detail on like the specific short stories from the collection that I enjoyed, if you're interested in that. Silver Under Nightfall by Rin Chupeco is a vampire romantasy book. I was thinking a bit about the genre and the marketing categories in relation to this book because paranormal romance is its own genre, and I think like maybe this could be categorized like that, but it does take place in a world completely separate from our own. It's not vampires on Earth, it's vampires in like a totally different world and society. And it does feel pretty balanced, I would say, between the romance or the spicy elements and the fantasy elements. The fantasy is really built out here. Whereas I think a paranormal romance, I would consider that to be a romance book with some paranormal elements. So I'd be curious to know if I have that distinction right. So I'm categorizing this as romantasy. In the end, I think I liked this book about as much as I can expect to like any romantasy book as someone who is not a typical fan of romantasy or the romance genre. I liked that there was a lot of political intrigue. It was a little bit difficult for me to follow at first, but I really think that was because I was primarily listening to the audiobook and not reading it physically, and that makes it harder for me to track fantasy names and titles and things that are important for political intrigue. This does have a polyamorous relationship. The main relationship is a throuple, which is fun, although I want to note that it's like a very wish fulfillment-y depiction of polyamory. So the negotiation of the relationship dynamics are not a huge emphasis here. They're like, oh yeah, we talked and we want you to join us. I thought like some of the exposition and the writing was a little clunky, but like nothing super immersion breaking. Mostly this was just like action-packed fun time, and I think if you like romantasy and you like vampires and you haven't tried this yet, I would tell you to give it a go. Also vampires, I read Dracula's Guest, a connoisseur's collection of Victorian vampire stories. This is edited by Michael Sims. It's what it says in the subtitle, depending on how strict we're being with the word Victorian. It's vampire short stories that were published in the 19th and early 20th centuries. They're not necessarily from Victorian England, but it's like that era of vampire short stories. I started reading this. I picked this up after Anna from Russia with Books invited me to read Dracula with her, and I'm also reading Dracula right now. To me, who is like coming in knowing about just about nothing of the vampire canon, I thought this anthology was like a good variety of vampire tropes and types. It seemed pretty well curated to me. The highlights for me were The Family of the Vordelak by Alexei Tolstoy, The Mysterious Stranger by Karl von Wachsmann, and Luella Miller by Mary Eleanor Wilkins Freeman. I finally got around to reading The Ministry of Time by Kellyanne Bradley. This is about a woman who works for the Ministry of Time as a bridge to monitor and assimilate Commander Graham Gore, who is like a real historical figure that we don't know much about, who in the book is rescued from a failed Arctic expedition in the year 1847 as part of a secret government time travel project. They want to study how time travel affects people, and like physically and mentally, and like how this time travel technology works. What I liked about this one is that it is sci-fi and thriller and romance, and part of why I wanted to read this is because I have seen such contrasting reviews of this book. Some people really loved it and others really did not gel with it. And I guess having read it, I fall on the side of the people who really liked this book. We already know that I love a timey-wimey thing, and the way that this draws parallels between people out of time with migrants and refugees who similarly find themselves in a new culture. It's an interesting angle, I thought, to bring to it. Additionally, in the most positive way possible, this really brought me back to the days of Tumblr and fan fiction. This is like that really good fandom-defining fan fiction with the way it bridges genre and romance and sentimentality. Finally, the last book I finished this month was The Spring of the Ram by Dorothy Dunnett. This is the second book in the Niccolo Rising series that takes Niccolo to Trebizond in modern-day Turkey. The action continues to be nonstop and thrilling for largely being a book about trade and business, but Dunnett makes the historical setting feel so vivid and lived in, and she like knows how to create the stakes. The political web can be a little bit difficult to follow in the beginning, but I find like sort of as needed things fall into place. So it's like the mystery element of the story really works with like, you don't have to be an expert on all of these historical, like all of this historical knowledge, these political alliances. It will make sense when it needs to make sense. I did not go to the movie theater at all in July, which is kind of crazy. If you've watched any of these like recent July releases in theaters, I'm curious your thoughts if you want to share them in the comments in a non-spoilery fashion. I know there were some recent big blockbusters that might be nice to see, and Eddington was the other one I had my eye on. So let me know if you've watched anything in the comments. The movie I did watch, I watched at home on Netflix. This was K-pop Demon Hunters. I have not rewatched this multiple times like some of my friends have, but I am on the bandwagon with this one. I think the concept is great, the character design is great, the animation is great, the soundtrack is great. My one gripe is that I felt like the ending didn't hold together with what I thought the themes of the movie were, but I feel like I'm in the minority with like being bothered by that, and it frankly doesn't really bother me. I really liked this movie, and I'm glad to see it was so successful. Also, my boys BTS are out of the military now, so it's a good time to celebrate K-pop. Staying in Korea, I started watching Squid Game season 3 this month. I have not finished it yet. It was kind of flat for me. I watched the first 3 episodes. I haven't finished it out yet. I probably will finish it just to finish it. But to me, this is a TV show that did not need another season after season 1. In contrast, I finished watching Murderbot, and the season finale was excellent. I continued to like how they handled the adaptation. It's not a perfect one-to-one with the books, but I think they struck a really great balance of capturing the feeling from the book while making it work for TV. And that one is officially renewed for a second season, and I'm really pleased about that. I'm curious to see what more decisions they make in terms of adapting it, because I think there's a lot of options with the direction the books go and the directions they could take the TV show. Finally, I want to shout out the Overdue podcast. This is a long-running bookish podcast that I only recently discovered and started listening to. But if you're not familiar with it, there's 2 hosts, Andrew and Craig, and the format is that usually the hosts take turns reading a book, and then they explain it and talk about it to the other host. And I just thought that was a really fun, effective format for a book podcast, because I obviously enjoy listening to the episodes about the books I've already read, but I also enjoy listening to the episodes for books that I haven't read yet, and I think I probably won't listen to anytime soon, because it's really easy to follow along when one host is serving as a sort of like listener stand-in that has not read the book, you know. They don't generally do like really major literary analysis, but they do the work to put the book and the author in context and read across a lot of different time periods and genres. So like, for example, the most recent episodes I listened to were The Ministry of Time by Kellyanne Bradley. They also read Play It As It Lays by Joan Didion. They read Stone Butch Blues by Leslie Feinberg. And they also read The Complete Peanuts by Charles Schulz. And so thanks to that podcast for being a great thing to listen to while I cook dinner. And I'd recommend it if you haven't like given it a shot yet. It's been around for a really long time apparently, and it's just new to me. So that's all for July. In the comments, I'd love to know what you've been enjoying lately and what you're looking forward to. Next month, I'm looking forward to finishing Dracula and continuing my education and deep dive into Dracula adaptations and vampire media with Anna. I think it will also be time to finally read Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. So it's been a bit of a tough July for me, but I have high hopes for August. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.